introduction. I first want to thank all the speakers for being here, for supporting me, supporting the program, supporting the students. Thank you guys for taking the time to be here. My name is Landry. I'm a political science major, senior at CLU, and I got this fellowship, which I was really excited about, which is just, to uplift, celebrate Black lives, and, just I thought this program was the best way, just making sure we're helping our students once they're out there in the workforce to be able to know the skills, the tips, to know the tricks, and what you need to do to advance to leadership positions, which is something that's not typical for Black people in a lot of the fields of the people we have here today. As like, I was looking at some of the demographics when I was thinking about this, and I was like, yeah, we really need to, be encouraging these people to really take initiative and do what they need to do once they get out there in the workforce. So that's how I kind of came up with this idea, and that's how I came up with the program. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you for supporting, for the speakers, and for the people coming to listen in, the students. More people should be coming in as we go. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to push it over to Regina to just give us an overview of the program. And yeah.
Well, Landry, thank you so much for inviting me with this opportunity. For those of you who I've not had the pleasure to yet meet, my name's Regina Biddings Moro, and I serve as Vice President of University Advancement here at California Lutheran University. And the reason that I have the privilege to be with you today is because a colleague who is also on this call with me, a Cal Lutheran community member, Dr. Kelly Owens, who serves in our Office of Sponsored Programs, Sponsored Research and Programs. The two of us put our heads together in a moment of sadness and in a moment of deep concern and pain that our collective larger community was experiencing. And right after George Floyd was murdered, the university community heard the call that reflected from the Minnesota college president at North Central University. During the George Floyd memorial service, he called on colleges and universities to establish scholarships in his name. And that certainly, beyond the statements of outrage that came from many sectors of the community, both public and private, at Cal Lutheran, because a member of our Board of Regents, our executive cabinet, turned to me and said, what can we do? Should we establish a scholarship? And I give so much credit to my colleague, Dr. Kelly Owens, who has incredible depth of experience in urban education and urban experience, and the ability to concretize our outrage in a positive way, to do good work, to lift up the Black community, to have students involved, to take their activism and put it to work in ways that would, of course, increase awareness and understanding about the racial injustices that particularly harm Black people in a specific way, and to spotlight anti-Blackness. And what are the things that we can do to work against that as a community through student scholarship and community awareness. The program also, I want to spotlight and thank the members of the community organizations who have formed a circle around our students, around our scholars to support this work. The Black Greek letter organizations, the community organizations, the links, I can turn it over to Dr. Owens to name each and every one of them, but it really is a collective impact process. And now after this first year, we have 3 community scholars in the program, and we are about to onboard the next group. One of the community sponsors is the Amgen Foundation. Have to give them a shout out because they believe in this work and they are putting their money where their mouth is, and they are sponsoring this work in tandem with California Lutheran University. So I am delighted, and if you would, I know she didn't come prepared to make remarks, and I know we want to be sure we stay within time, but she is the keeper of the books, my colleague, Dr. Owens. And so if you would just at least list the names of those organizations, because they are so important in this process.
So I do want to give a shout out to our community partners, and I'll start with my organization, the Ventura County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We also have the Channel Island Links. Also, all of the remaining organizations have chapters within Ventura County, and those are Alpha Phi Alpha, also Alpha Kappa Alpha, also Omega Psi Phi, and joining us for our next cohort, we will have Kappa Alpha Psi. So thank you all for being a part of this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Owens. And now we're just to let you guys know, I am recording this. I received a lot of requests for students who could not make it. So some of them sent in questions. So I will record this, will be posted and ask those questions as we go. But now just push it over to the panel to give us a 4-minute introduction. And the question is, tell us about your background and previous experiences that led you to the position you are in now. And I will start with Panda.
Thank you, Landry, and thank you for the opportunity. Lovely to meet everyone. My name is Panda Mutsepedi Tsepo. I am originally from South Africa. I'm not sure if you can hear the accent is a little bit different. I'm an MD, actually qualified in South Africa. I actually went to one of the few South African historically Black medical universities called Medunsa, the Medical University of South Africa. Subsequently, it's changed its name. I'm a GP by profession. I have been in our industry for 19 years. As soon as I finished my medical qualification, my internship in South Africa, we have something called community service, where you spend an additional year working in a rural area to help uplift the communities in those areas. I pivoted my career to joining industry, and I'll answer a little bit later how I did that and why I did that. But I've been with Amgen, as I mentioned. Oh, I didn't mention that actually. I've been with Amgen for 10 years. The 1st of April was actually my 10-year anniversary. Thank you very much. It's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. I think Amgen is a fantastic, not just company, but a place that really takes its mission seriously, which is to serve patients. I'm currently in what we call a global medical affairs lead role. So what that really means is that I'm in charge and work closely with our commercial side of the business to create strategies for our bone, which is osteoporosis, as well as our nephrology therapeutic area, so patients who suffer from severe kidney disease. I also wear another hat at Amgen, where I'm involved in our efforts to increase and improve on our diversity for clinical trials. And the name of the team is called RISE. And then the third hat I wear at Amgen is I am our Amgen Black Employee Resource, Black Employee Network lead, global lead. It's called ABEN. And these are employee resource groups, and we have about 11 of them. And I lead the ones for all Black Amgen employees. Again, really happy to be here. Lovely to meet you. And I look forward to the conversation a little bit later.
Thank you, Dr. Panda. Thank you. And next, we will hear from Councilwoman Lori Brown.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say first, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor. Having went to this CLU and graduated from this university, I always feel like it's a special privilege to be asked to come back to speak. So I just I'll do a quick background. Born and raised in the city of Ventura, to parents who placed a huge emphasis on education for as early as I can remember. I always knew I wanted to go to college, but I had children first. I raised my 3 boys while attending CLU on an academic scholarship, first undergrad, then later graduate school. They formed that MPPA program while I was still in the bachelor's program and recruited me during the last year of my undergrad program. And I was asked if I was interested in beginning their ADEP program while I was still completing my undergraduate work. And I said yes. I completed the program in exactly 2 years. I interned with the city of Oxnard. As I interned with the city of Oxnard, I was trained into project management. I was also a student ambassador on campus, and a managing editor of the campus publication, The Echo. And then after I graduated, I was appointed to the board of Cause, which is a nonprofit organization. All those things were important to me because I was trying to create a path, a blueprint for myself. Because one of the things I learned was that through reading the audio biographies of political figures such as Donna Brazile and Miss Barbara Jordan, Willie Brown in the state of California, and reading all those, what I found was that all of them created their own path, even Colin Powell. I chose CLU because it was close, it was Christian, and they offered scholarships and had a high graduation rate. What I did not expect at the end of receiving my degree was no full-time job. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because no one was hiring. So as you may recall or not, in 2009, right around that time, the economy tanked. There were hiring freezes everywhere. The city allowed me to remain in my internship as project manager, and I worked as a temp for 6 years. I want to say, I share this because I want to say, never be ashamed of how you got where you are. No one knows your story or the things you go through just to get to class or to graduate or to be where you're at. I learned what made a city run, all the nuts and bolts, and I traded money for the experience and on-the-job skills. While working there in 2011, Governor Brown eliminated the Redevelopment Act that established the agency I worked for. So essentially that ended my career field. I remained working there and was promoted without title and pay. So when the opportunity came to run for office, I took it. I wanted the knowledge and information I gained to be a benefit to the community that I grew up in. The last thing I'm going to say is, can you believe that after having done all of that, that I was incapable of quantifying my true value during that time? I could not determine what I was worth in the workplace. And this was reinforced every time I was denied a job, remained unemployed or underemployed. And I became accustomed to minimizing my intelligence, worried that I would be deemed overqualified while not qualifying at all. So I just wanted to offer those things to those who are listening, because not only do I want to tell a little bit about myself, but I kind of want to be a witness. I kind of want to inspire. I want people to understand that where I got today did not come easy, because I think a lot of times we tell all the pretty stuff, we don't tell the hard stuff. And that doesn't actually help you get where you need to be. So thank you for having me, and I will end.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Hugh Maloti.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to meet you, and it's a great privilege and honor to be here. I visited the campus once, and it's a beautiful place. I think you're very lucky to have that as your institution of higher learning. I'll just very quickly tell you about my background. I was born and grew up in Zambia.
I'm Penny. Oh,
I'm sorry, does somebody need to be on mute? Okay, I'll continue. I was born and grew up in Zambia. I'm the child of South African exiles. They were exiles during the apartheid era, but they since moved back in the 90s. I came to the US for college. I studied computer engineering and eventually settled in Silicon Valley. Where I spent most of my career is a company called Intuit. You may know of them. They make QuickBooks and TurboTax. And I had a very good career there. I got to do a lot of interesting things, including helping the company launch several new products. Many of them that were not successful, but there were a few notable successes, including helping launch their payments business. And towards the end of my time at Intuit, I was a VP of innovation. So innovation is an area that I've spent a lot of time in leadership roles and thinking about how to cultivate cultures of innovation where you can work in a big company, but still be innovative and entrepreneurial. I left Intuit at the end of 2015, and since then I've been doing a number of different things. I spend most of my time on my startup, Ujamaa, which is a community messaging platform. But I'm also spending more time in Africa these days. I serve as a non-executive director on the board of Bottle World, which is headquartered in Johannesburg. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the discussion and hearing your questions, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Malosi. And just to close that off, we're going to hear from President Julius Aquino.
Hi, everyone. I'm keeping my mask on because I'm in a hospital with my son. So I certainly want to respect the policies here. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity to sort of speak with you today and honor the invitation that Landry has extended me. It is a pleasure to be here speaking to you this afternoon. I am the current and permanent president of Mopa College. For those of you who know, I was interim president for the past 2 years, and as of 2 days ago, the Board of Trustees appointed me as the permanent president of the college after a national search. So I am very grateful to them, but I am also very grateful to our college community for their support and the opportunity to represent them in this landscape and particularly in this county at this point in time. I, like some of the folks here, came to this country as an international student. I'm originally from Nigeria, West Africa, and I came to the US to study at USC and got a bachelor's degree in business and English, and then transferred to Arizona State to earn a master's degree in creative writing. I discovered the joys of writing and the impact of literature while I was an undergraduate and pursued that. While I was a student at Arizona State, I was awarded a teaching fellowship. And so I was able to support myself and continue my education through that teaching fellowship at Arizona State. And that exposed me to the incredible opportunity of helping to shape minds and helping to build knowledge and helping to support the importance of not only knowledge in our community, but knowledge exchange. And so I had that opportunity and I started teaching as a part-time faculty member, and then came back to California and taught at West Los Angeles Community College. And then subsequently actually moved back east to Connecticut for a full-time job. And while there, it was very clear to me that many of our students do not believe in their abilities. Many of our students at the community college and some of our students of color doubted their ability to write. There are people who believe that writing is a God-given task, and if you don't have, if God doesn't give you that skill set, then you can't do it. And my role was to not only provide the technical infrastructure and understanding, but to help support them in building that confidence, that internal motivation that is necessary for success across the institution. And so I pursued a doctorate in education for that particular reason. And that particular doctorate, my dissertation was supporting and motivating at-risk students. So I worked with 25 first-generation students, most of them under 21. Most of them had been emancipated. And I studied this population for 2 years, and then ultimately, wrote my dissertation. And that was sort of the kernel and the energy that informed my wanting to work in community colleges. I wanted to work with the most vulnerable students. I wanted to work in colleges where students, for them, education is a path to prosperity. There is no guarantee that they will be successful without it, but that they so certainly need it, not only for their own well-being, but for well-being of their families for generations to come, and particularly for their community and for our community. So the motivation to continue to work in higher education, and particularly in community college education, comes from the need to impact the community and build pathways to success for our community. And I have been very lucky. I've been at Moorpark College since 2007. I was hired as a Dean of Student Learning, and went from Dean of Student Learning to being a Executive Vice President, which meant that both the instruction and the student services reported to me, or I was responsible for them. And then 2 years ago, there was some changes in our district, and my president moved to Oxnard College, and I was given the opportunity to serve as acting president, and then interview for the interim president position at Moorpark College. And as I said, 2 days ago was awarded and announced as the college president after going through a national search. What motivates me is the need to make sure that not only are we represented, but that our voices matter. When there is a table for conversation, that not only are we there, but that when we are there, that we are doing the work that will empower our community. So that's my short introduction. It's a pleasure to be at this distinguished panel, and I look forward to engaging and learning some more from you as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and congratulations on the great news. So we're just going to segue into panel discussions, and I'm just going to ask a question and just go answering as we go. So the first question of the panel is, what advice would you give your younger self at the start of your career? And I will either call out, or if somebody feels like they want to first go, throw it out there.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would tell myself is that every difficult thing I went through was for a purpose and a reason. Because I think the struggles that I endured going to school, raising my kids, sometimes while you're in the middle of it, you feel like there's no end and you can't see where you're going to end up or where you're going necessarily, even though you do have a plan. And that I am actually as talented as I believed I was, but slowly over time, being treated a certain way, being spoken to a certain way, being denied jobs. I would tell her, don't doubt your ability and your talent and your intelligence, because it's really easy to start doing that. I would tell her to get involved sooner, start that business. I have a writing, media, and communications business called Final Polish. I did writing for free for a long time because I didn't place a value in what I did. And when I started quantifying that value and calculating it, I got paid for it. I would tell her, fight to get on executive boards. Years ago, when I grew up, all the boards had all white males, but that shouldn't have stopped me from trying to become an elected delegate, to fight to get elected, to be in party politics. So those are some of the things I would say.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Panda?
Laurie, that's really powerful. Thank you. And I agree with a lot of the same. I think when I think about my younger self, I think about my 14-year-old daughter. And what do I say to her? One of the biggest things I say to her, being African, being a female, trying to make a difference, moving from one country to another. What I didn't say in my introduction is that when I left South Africa about 6 years ago, we moved to Canada, where I went to head up Amgen's Canadian medical affiliate. And I've only recently moved here to the US. But what I say to her, and I would say to my younger self, is, continue to understand that the world is big. Don't ever think that you are less or that you cannot because of where you come from. I think if you put your head to it, if you believe in yourself, if you go to school and stay in school, one of the things that I learned very early on, and I would still say this to my young self even now, is be inquisitive, especially when it comes to the sciences. We know that there's such a big gap in STEM, for example, with young girls, young boys as well, but mainly young girls, and the lack of interest. The environment also doesn't encourage them to go into STEM. People think biology is hard, science is boring. I learned from a very young age to be inquisitive and to get involved with the sciences and want to be part of the sciences. So most importantly, what I'm saying is I would tell my younger self to not be afraid, to put your head out there, put your hand up and say, I can do it, I will try. Take chances, take risks, calculated risks, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And then, of course, one of the biggest things I would say to my young self is that, we all know that we make mistakes. We don't always succeed in everything that we try to do. But when you fail and when you fall, you rise up again and you dust yourself off and try again.
Yep.
Great advice. Mr. Hugh Maloney?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think for me, one of the biggest epiphanies I've had in my career is this notion of playing to your strengths. And what I mean by that is, early in my career, you come across people who are very successful, who are very influential, and you look at them and in a way, it's very daunting because you say, okay, I would like to have that type of success, but I don't know if I can do that, because you see some of the things they do and you see that it's really amazing. And, you just don't necessarily see that in yourself. But what you don't realize is that you're underselling the strengths that you have. I have this belief that each one of us has a superpower, and by superpower I define that as something you do better than 95% of the population. And so the problem a lot of us have is either we don't know what our superpower is, or we're not applying that superpower to the way we make a living. But I think the people who have done that are the people who end up being most fulfilled and most successful in their careers. So it's really important to have that self-awareness of what your strengths are and then play to them. And those are the things that you will leverage as you look for jobs and as you perform your job, and that you're not trying to be like someone else. I think that was often a mistake I made in my early part of my career, thinking I'd have to mold myself to be like someone else. But really, success is being the best you that you can be. So play to your strengths. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much. And next we'll hear from President Aquino.
I think it's so important for us as we sort of navigate the world not to listen to the naysayers. I think it's so important for us to surround ourselves with people who are not only going to affirm us, but people who are also going to speak truth to us. And often some of those people may not be the same. So making sure that it's wide enough a net that you cast. But if I listen to every time when someone in some way or the other, either explicitly or not, said to me, you're not good enough, or you need to wait your turn, which has been said to me a couple of times. If I listen to those voices, and sometimes the voice also comes from within me, right? And if I listen to those voices, I would certainly not be where I am today. So I think it's so important to make sure that we surround ourselves with people who are going to affirm us. I think it's also very important to create our own community. I think often, we are either isolated, and so we're in communities where, folks do not look like us and the experiences are not similar to us, and we're the only one. If I have to go to one more thing where I'm the only one, I'm going to scream. But the reality of it is where I am right now, that's often the case, right? In these roles, we're often the only one, or we're probably like, of the 5 brightest, right? And then everybody else has come from other communities. But one of the things I've learned is the ways in which I reach out to people who I want to be in my circle, who I want to motivate me, who I want to affirm me. And I accept the fact that some of those people will come from my community and they will look like me, and some of those people will not. And that I build that in. But I really do reach out to the folks who come from my community. And I try my very best to stay connected. to stay connected to the Black community, to stay connected to an African community. I think that's very important to me because I know that at the end of the day, I need a place where I feel grounded, and that grounding is often found in those communities. I think it's also, I know it's very important for us to strive beyond whatever the barriers are. Often, as I said earlier, you hear people say you can't, this is not your time, or this is not your place. And I think being able to set very clear goals, once I realized this is the career path I was going to pursue, I wanted to be the very best at everything I did. And I'm a perfectionist by nature, which has its strengths and it has its challenges, but I was very clear that I set myself up for excellence. And that if I couldn't do that, then why bother, right? And so I went into the engagement that I would be the very best at this, that no one would be able to say to me, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And so it's not your turn, or you're not the right person. Even if they said it, if I knew I've been able to do all of these things and I've been able to demonstrate it, then I can hear that and realize that that's a false narrative, right? So very important for us to have those very high expectations for ourselves, but also look for places where we will get the support. We don't do it alone. We can't do it alone. And we need folks who are going to sort of be an ear. There are moments where I know what I want to have happen, and I will talk to people behind the scenes before the event starts, right? Before the meeting begins, and be very clear as to, here's how we'll navigate, or how we can navigate this. And having those individuals who are supportive and who have my back and who also have the same vision and they want to go the same route matters.
Thank you so much, President Ciccone. So we're gonna move into more individualized question, and then some of the questions submitted by some of the people here, and then we'll open it up for an audience Q&A. But the first question is for Councilwoman Lori, did you always want to be an elected official, and what prompted you to run for office?
So yes, is a short answer to that question. But as early as I can remember, as early as 12, I remember I wanted to run for office. Since my preteens, I never thought I would have the opportunity to run in the city I grew up in, however. I was always seeking to get my education and move to a predominantly Black area because I thought that's the only way I'm going to be able to win. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to run in the city I grew up in. Most Black elected officials in the state that I look to were elected by constituents that look like them. The opportunity presented itself one spring when a local club held a candidate training in Ventura at the public library on Main Street. They were seeking viable candidates and were willing to help the person get elected. They were offering their time, their expertise, and to train a grassroots team. And I knew that was unique and special. And I took advantage of that. I set up a meeting with them, and the rest is history. I mean, not exactly. I had to run 3 times to win, of course. It was a brutal commitment I made, but I believed in myself and what I offered. I was the most qualified candidate, having years of experience working in community development for a city, understanding public budgeting, understanding exactly the role of city council members, and all the programs that supported city services and affordable housing. I was the only candidate with a master's degree. There were a couple of attorneys. And the first time I ran, though, I was the only woman, the only person of color, and the only person under 40. So, it was a really easy conversation to have. The city of Ventura elected to go to districts, my third run. And as a result, created a unique opportunity for me to win my seat by a landslide because I had name recognition at that point. I became the first Black elected official in the city of Ventura ever in the 150 years of the city. I was also a part of the first female majority. There was 4 of us at that time, and the first Democratic majority on council. So I got to be a part of civil rights policies in action. So I'll end it there, but I just want to say that I feel like this was a wonderful ride that I had the opportunity to be on. There were certainly challenges. There were certainly things as a Black woman or a Black person that made it a little bit more challenging and a little bit more difficult to get where I'm at. Took a little bit longer, had to work a little bit harder, had to work, alone a lot of times as a Black woman. There's a perception that you can do it all, and they do literally let you do everything. And I would encourage those who have aspirations in politics to know your value as an elected or a candidate, demand what it is that you need, and calculate exactly how much money you're going to need for those campaigns, and require those organizations who are going to be endorsing you to give it to you. Because one of the things I found is people would speak in the newspapers, in videos, person to person, about how great and wonderful Lori was, how viable she is, all the great things she's done. But when it came to them putting their money where their mouth was, they wouldn't give the full donation to my campaign, but they would give it to my white counterpart. So, but that was more so because I wasn't aware of what my power was and how to leverage all of that power. I knew how to leverage some of it, but not all of it. So.
Thank you so much for that. And the next question is from Mr. Hugh Mabotzi. It is, what was it along your path that made you want to start your own business? And what were the most important things that you learned in your education and job experience that positioned you to run a successful startup? And I can repeat that, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, the first thing I'd say is, our Ujama is not yet at escape velocity. So a success is maybe a little bit premature to say, but we are certainly moving along in a positive direction. Again, I spent my bulk of my career in a large corporation, and but I was fortunate that I got to flex my entrepreneurial and innovation ambitions in a large company. And in fact, that's part of my background that I talk about a lot, that you don't necessarily have to be a startup to do really great innovative work. And the best companies understand this, and they create cultures that are that actually encourage innovation, encourage people to work on their own ideas, encourage people to experiment. And in fact, I wrote a book after leaving Intuit with a former colleague just on that subject. It's called Entrepreneur's Journey. So intrapreneur instead of entrepreneur. But in terms of my background, I like exploring new areas, and I also tend to question the status quo, where many people might just accept the way things are. And I think those type of attributes are helpful when it comes to somebody who's going to be thinking about new ways, new products, new ways of solving problems. And I was very satisfied with the career I had. When I left Intuit, I wasn't actually wasn't my intention to build a startup. In fact, as I mentioned, I serve on a board now. This was really what I was intending to do with this phase of my career. But I decided along the way to go on this detour of starting Ujama, because it has an important mission to me, which I felt nobody was building, which is how can we build a platform that it has this community focus, which is inclusive, and then because of that inclusivity, it addresses the needs of people all up and down the economic pyramid. Our initial focus was connecting parents with other parents so they could help each other with their kids. And this is in contrast to other solutions you'll see where they're on-demand gig economy solutions where you pay somebody to give your kid a ride or to come and babysit your kid. And the problem with those type of solutions is that they're very expensive. So if you are somebody who is, let's say, a low-paid hourly worker, you still have the same challenges when it comes to parenting, but nobody's building a solution to address your needs. And so it was the passion to find a way to solve that problem was part of the motivation I had for starting Ujama. The other thing I'll just say very quickly is, I think that the tech sector is a great way, it's a great place for people to spend their careers, a great way to lift people out of poverty. One of the challenges, though, is not enough of us are choosing, a technical path. Not choosing STEM when we go to college, and part of that is just the lack of role models. And one of the things that I think would be very positive is if there are more people who look like us, who are starting companies and are successful, become household names. I believe that will inspire a lot of people to think about the tech career. You may know of a service called Calendly, which was created by a Nigerian American, which is very successful. It's a unicorn. We need more stories of that where we can see people of color who are succeeding in a big way in our industry. And so that also motivates me to say, well, let's make that happen. Let's have more of those role models. So hopefully that answers some of your question.
That does. Thank you so much. And the next question is for Dr. Panda. As an MD, what motivated you to transition into the pharmaceutical industry? And if you could tell us more, what are the differences between pharma and patient care?
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Maybe let me start by saying what motivated me to become a doctor. As I mentioned earlier on, I was very curious as a youngster. I recall as far back as sort of biology class, the first time we had to dissect a frog. It was, some people got freaked out, but I was actually made more curious about it because I was intrigued by the complexity of the anatomy. So I knew then that I had a spark that was lit in trying to understand the world of medicine. The more I immersed myself into learning the sciences at school, I became more inquisitive. Eventually, this led me to become a doctor. So fast forward, I get into medical school, and when it was time to go to university, I was very clear that that is what I wanted to do, and follow the sciences. I had a few mentors around me in our community. I lived in a township called Harankua, which is about 35 kilometers north of Pretoria, one of the capital cities of South Africa. And there was a strong sense of community. And my father had a friend who was a general practitioner, and he really was one person that I looked up to. And I thought, well, if he can do it, I'm sure I can do it too. So as I mentioned, I eventually got accepted into medical school, did the whole residency. It was whilst I was in the system, and I studied in my internship in community service in Johannesburg. I treated and managed many different diseases, as you can imagine, being a physician. But having understood and experienced the practical side of human anatomy, physiology, I started to become more curious. And I wanted to understand the drugs that we were using and the therapies that we were using to treat patients. How are they discovered? Where do they come from? So having had a strong scientific and medical background, I decided to join a pharma company. And I knew that this would allow me to sort of be at the forefront of research and development, and to actually start being part of the story of new drug technologies. I also knew that I could make a difference in a different way to patients who are really suffering from severe and grievous illnesses like cancer, heart disease, bone diseases, etc. So being part of this industry, initially I started with a pharma company called Wyeth, which was subsequently bought out by Pfizer. And then I eventually moved into joining Amgen in South Africa. And I really felt that there is a bigger opportunity to understand the business side, to be able to impact how we design our studies, the discoveries that we make, the innovation that we create. And in a way, I don't actually see it as a difference. The only difference is that you don't literally see a patient anymore, but instead through innovation, through advancements in medicine and things like precision medicine, we're able to serve patients in a very different way, but we're still able to help them with their grievous and serious illnesses. So it has been a transition, but I feel like it's provided me with the opportunity to go beyond just your day-to-day medical patient doctor care, to understand business, to understand research, to understand how things and our drugs get marketed, to understand philanthropy, And it's been a really interesting journey. And I will say, I think a little bit to what Hugh is saying, we need more pandas in our industry, and we need more of us, at senior leadership levels where we know we can influence not just our day-to-day job, but the overall strategy of the organizations that we work for, and also be role models. I think we have many young children, girls and boys, who need more Black, female or male, but role models that look like them so that they know that they can do it. It can be achieved.
Thank you so much for that. And next, a question for President Sakano. When you began your career in higher education, what did you prepare yourself? Did you prepare yourself, or were you thinking of being college president one day? And what are some of the most challenging parts of being a college president?
Right. Yeah, I never thought I would be a college president. Actually, it wasn't an aspiration. I really just didn't. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I knew people, of color who were college presidents, but it wasn't an interest. Maybe that was a place to start. And the more I sort of went through the ranks, and I realized that the opportunity to make a difference lies in the authority that comes from the position that one holds. And so that made a lot, for me, and impacted how I pursued my dream. I have to say, the reason that I'm here today is because I had mentors who believed in me. I had individuals who saw something in me when I didn't. So when I was a faculty member, and it was in my second year of being a faculty member, I was still going through the tenure process. And I had a dean who said to me, "You should be department chair. You know as much as these people who are currently chairing, and you have a lot of innovative ideas. You work well with students. Their colleagues really listen to you. So why not? And that voice, that support, really did help inspire me. Then I got to be a department chair, and I realized very clearly again that I was one of a handful of people in that role, even in higher education, and even in community college education in the 1990s. Right, I was in that situation. So it made sense for me at that point to begin to look at moving beyond where I was. It also made sense because people looked to me. There were folks who sort of would come to me and say, "We're about to work on this project. We want you to be part of that. There's this conference taking place at X, Y, and Z. You need to come and present. We love that project that you worked on with students, or we're appreciative of the work that you're doing right here." And then that served as motivation, but that also allowed me to bring other people along. And the more I could bring others along to the conversation and create a community, create that critical mass, folks who had the same kind of perspective I had about equity, people who had the same kind of perspective I had about student support, people who truly did believe that education is not only about knowledge, but it's about empowering community. The more I could sort of gather that coalition, I think the more effective I became. In terms of the role of a college president, was the question, what's challenging about it?
Yeah, what are some of the challenges?
Okay, what are some of the challenges? The college president ultimately ends up being the face of the college, and has a lot to do with the brand, the image of the college, and has a lot to, it's the person who articulates to the community why they should support their college in a lot of ways. Even though the students and the faculty and staff do that, as a college president, your role is to be there to articulate very clearly, why Moore Park College deserves the attention of our community. And I find that sometimes the challenge is between what the college wants to do and accomplish, and what the resources we have and the limitations of those resources. So we spend a lot of time looking for ways to support the institution by getting goodwill so that we can fund particular projects. We spend so much time, writing grants to support things. We spend so much time advocating in Sacramento for resources. And so that's part of the challenge. Another part of the challenge is that as college president, I find that we're there are all these fractions and within institutions and within organizations. And the work of the college president is to bring all of these groups together around a common purpose. So if I, alongside my cabinet and college leadership in faculty and in classified ranks, can do that work together, then we're able to move further along. We're able to accomplish more. And that, I think, is one of the most significant challenges that one faces as the CEO of an institution of higher education, making sure that you build a coalition of individuals who can move the agenda forward and do so in such a way that respects the integrity, not only of the students and the faculty and the staff, but of your institution's mission.
Thank you so much. So now we're going to segue into a Q&A session, which is open to everybody in attendance. If you have a question, you could use the raise hand feature, or you could put your question in the chat or send it to me personally. I'm going to start off with the questions that were sent to me. This question is open for anybody on the panel who can answer it. But the question is, my question for the panel is, did you give yourself a time frame for your success? For example, 3 years, 4 years, and if not promoted, leave. And this is open to anybody.
I'll jump in and say, for the most part, I did not have a time frame for anything. But in hindsight, I think I could have been more strategic and thoughtful about my career progression if I had. And so I'll just share with you the advice I've given other folks, junior employees, in the later years of my career. So what I tell them is that, it's very important not to get stagnant in your job. You want to always feel like you are progressing, and progressing is not just about promotions and pay increases. It's also about the fact that you're learning new skills, because that also contributes to increasing the value that you bring to a workplace, and of course developing leadership skills. And so getting those type of responsibilities is also important. And so you don't want to be in a place where you feel like you've been running in place for many, many years. And so what I tell people is that, yes, it's actually good to think about, whenever you take on a new job and a new assignment at work, think about it as, okay, I'm going to do this job for a certain time frame. And I tell people maybe 3 years is maybe a good time frame, because the first year you're really learning the ropes, and maybe it's the second and third years that you really start to pay off as you master that position. But then plan on, after 3 years, that you will move on to the next thing, and that you have actually been planning what the next progression would look like. And part of that is that you're actually talking to people. Even if you're in a big company, you're talking to other teams, trying to understand what other opportunities are out there, and maybe even talking to other companies in terms of what positions are there. And the reason why that's important is, when you get to that anniversary point where the time has elapsed, you can then decide that, yes, I want to stay in this job because I'm still learning a lot of things and I feel like my progression is good, or actually I see some other better opportunities and I'm going to make a shift. But at least it's an explicit decision. It's not just something you're doing just to keep going along because you're not being thoughtful. So that's the advice I give folks. But again, for me personally, I'd say for most of my career, I didn't actually apply that to myself. And so in many ways, I was very fortunate. But at the same time, I also would say there were probably a lot of opportunities that I missed because of, again, not being strategic and thoughtful about my career.
So maybe I can add a little bit of my sort of experience and feedback on that topic. I think that it's, and I think you highlighted it, Hugh, it's really important to not just have a plan when you get into the workplace, but make your plan known. I think that your career journey is not your manager's responsibility. It is not, your CEO's responsibility. It is actually your responsibility. And the first thing you need to do is sit down and carve out that career pathway with your manager and make sure your manager knows. The other thing I would say is, and a little bit to what Hugh was saying, is take those lateral moves because lateral moves actually give you a bigger idea and a bigger picture, and therefore more experience. I could share just a little bit of what I've done in my career within the pharmaceutical industry. As you know, I'm a doctor, but at some point, I think maybe 5 years into my role of being sort of a medical specialist within a pharmaceutical company, I raised my hand and I said, I'd like to do something different. And I took a completely lateral move and went into brand marketing. And I was a brand marketer for 3 years. And I did that because I knew that I needed to understand, not just from doing an MBA or doing a leadership program, what it means to be responsible for a P&L or be responsible for a brand strategy, but I needed to have that experience, and I needed to be able to say, I've done it. It was tough. It stretched me, but it's something that I believe has given me an edge even to today, where I find myself in sort of my leadership role and where I am within the organization. So I think taking those lateral moves are really important because it expands you in a way that you might feel that you've never been expanded or stretched before, but at the end of the day, it really, it gives you an edge, if I can say, put it that way. The other thing I said about raising your hands, and I think this is something particularly more difficult for Black females, is that we tend to not always want to raise our hands because we feel like, oh, I got to have 80% and be 90% qualified before I can even think of saying I want to do something new, I want to try something out. Really important not for us to be so hard on ourselves. The other thing I will say is so important to have a mentor. Mentorship is really, really important because it gives you somebody to bounce things off of. It gives you somebody to often provide you a bigger view than what you can often see. I've even had mentors that are outside of my medical environment and my medical team, which I feel have actually been a lot more helpful. Because it gives me a bigger industry view. And then the final thing I will say is really important to keep your external networks. A little bit to what Hugh was saying around making sure that you know what's happening around you. There's always more to learn from your peers that are inside or rather outside of your organization. So, I don't know what other platforms are being used these days, but I think LinkedIn is something that we all kind of are familiar with. And it's something that is really important to maintain, because that's where there's a lot of peer discussions. That's where you get to hear and see what other people are doing within your industry, and reaching out and creating and maintaining those networks is also very, very helpful.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
it's so important to engage in networks within your discipline and within your sector. And you asked a question about being very strategic. I think one of the benefits of realizing very early on is that I needed to get involved in professional organizations first and foremost, so that there's a network and there is a pathway to career growth. Then secondly, not just getting involved, but making sure that you hold office and that you are involved in planning events and programming and raising funds and being visible. So that you hold office, and not just holding office, but going from holding office to making sure that you're connecting your organization to others that can leverage the resources that they have, so that those organizations realize the value of your organization. And in so doing, you build a network. That network will then in some way look out for you because you're value to them, right? And I think we are not participating in those professional networks because there's no one there to tell us that it is important to connect to them. So when I came into the California Community Colleges, I needed to go outside of my college and outside of our district because I needed additional support. And so I became involved and engaged with a regional organization for career education professionals. And in that organization, I realized very quickly that there were projects to be done. And that if I could start working on those projects, I would not only be able to support my organization, but for our college, I needed to convince people that career education was equally as legitimate as transferring to a four-year university, because it was a college that privileged transfer to the detriment of career preparation at that point in time. And the more I could then bring dollars to support that to the organization, the more then folks listened to me, because I had dollars that the other divisions of deans did not have. And in so doing, built a network outside of the institution and actually at the state level. Then folks at the institution kind of rose, became aware, wow, we have a superstar here. Before that, they didn't see that. They just said, oh, he's doing that career thing, yeah, that's important, whatever. But the more I was able to invest in that structure, then bring that structure to the institution, and it had dollars to support the institution attached to it, the more relevant and the more significant I became in the conversations around resource allocation at our college. It also helped that I then got into a statewide organization that then I could go lobby in Sacramento. I could then talk to elected officials on an ongoing basis as to what we need at the institutional level. So I think it's so important for us to get involved in our professional organizations, chart our own course. If there are no professional organizations, be engaged in civic organizations, right? The Rotary, the Chamber, whichever. As a young professional, being connected to individuals who are in those organizations will help you. Often because we don't have those connections, then those individuals aren't able to, in some way, sponsor us. So I say to anyone who's working at our institution, you need to start connecting and serving in the community. And in serving the community, you have a better sense of what our community needs. And that then brings added value to the college, and it helps them with their own professional growth.
Thank you. I have quite a few submitted questions, so I'm just going to start off with those while, don't be shy, guys, but you can keep sending them to me. I can just read them off for you. There's another question for the panel, but the question is, do you have a life's bucket list and what is on it? Professionally, I think this person means. And I'll just open that to the whole panel, any bucket list and what is on it professional.
I will take a stab at it. Unfortunately, I mean, I want to say fortunately, I'm one of those people who writes down everything that she wants to do. And then I slowly go about ticking one off, at a time. I'm at the point in my career where most of those things that I had on that list have been checked off. As a Black elected official, I don't know what the term is called, but I have fatigue, meeting fatigue, leadership fatigue, out here in these organizations, especially among the African American organization, it's the same people in the same room and multiple different organizations. I'm tired. So when it comes to professional leadership, I'm starting to ask myself, how much of how I got where I am today is affecting what I think I still need to do now? In other words, why do I not think that there's enough great leaders out there right now like you that can pick up where I've left off? Much like when people run a race, what is that, the relay race? And they have that stick, that baton, and they run as hard as they can and they pass it on. Well, I've run as hard as I can. I'm ready to pass that baton on. And I think that's how it should happen. But the problem is, a lot of times, we as African Americans, Blacks, however you identify yourself, we've been in it so long and been working so hard, and we finally get that position, we want to hold on to it. But my goal is to try to train and to pull as many people up behind me to take my place. That's really what I would like to do. I don't want to ruin my physical and mental health trying to be somebody's hero, somebody's strong Black woman, because I'm one of those people who pushes back against that narrative. Certainly be strong, but don't allow anyone to put a label on you that makes you kill yourself. Because there's a lot of stuff out there to say yes to, but most of it we need to be saying no to, and stay focused on what those important things are. At this point in my career, I'm looking at what can I do to give back? So I've been elected. I've been a part of some of the most difficult conversations on council during George Floyd, budget crisis, pandemic, the Father Sarah statue, the Patriots coming to Ventura, a lot of racial unrest. And it's one of those things that I was chosen for such a time as this. But at the same time, and then right now we're in the middle of our general plan process, which takes about 2 years, and which I absolutely love and I'm sinking my teeth into. But just like military service, I feel like I'm going to serve my time and I'm going to keep moving. But I want to put my energies into things that maybe I never had an opportunity to do, because I was always chasing that good job, that real job, that title, that position, that somehow validated me or allowed me the access at the decision-making table to do what it is I wanted to do. But I grew up with parents. When I was very young, I was writing poetry at 6. I was taking art classes at college at 12. I was playing the saxophone in middle school and the trumpet. I was singing in the choir since I was 15. I'm an artist, but I came from a family that said you can't make money that way. And so I ended up being lost in my high school year because I knew who I was and where I wanted to go. I don't regret anything that I've done, but what I want to let students know is that don't let go of those things that are your loves along the way. So all while I was going to college and running for office and raising my kids, I still was singing, I was still writing, I still have my business on the side, so that when I'm ready to what I call have that exit plan, I can transition over to those things that I love. So.
Thank you. And I'm just going to try to have a live question now before I ask the next question over here. Are there any live questions for our panel? Okay, while you guys think those up, I have plenty over here, so I'll go ahead and ask those. Do you believe that you encountered any career barriers due to your racial or ethnic identity? If so, how did you overcome such obstacles?
Well, I'll get started on that one. So I absolutely heard things like, you should not run for office. You won't win. We have someone who speaks Spanish, so that basically they're better than you. Do you really think the city is ready for someone like you? Are they ready for someone Black? Do you want to be a 2-time loser? These are the things that were said to me to my face. Many of the things I've done in the city of Ventura, I've done with no guidance, because I've done things that no one else has had to do. There's no blueprint, there's no plan, there's no mentor, there's no backup. The dean of the MPPA program, who trained me to do what I did when I graduated with my master's in public policy and administration, refused to support my run for office. The organization, I spent years on the board pushing for the establishment of 501c4s, which are parts of 501c3 organizations that can raise money on behalf of candidates, so that they could put money behind candidates that believed in the same things that they believed in. And I definitely believed in everything that they believed in. They laughed in my face when I said I was going to run for office. Even though, on the flip side, I was told I should run for office. So there's a flip side to everything, though. It's a weird dichotomy. That overall feeling that the rules change when you arrive on the scene is real. Just to give an example, I was on the supervisory committee of the Pacific Oaks Federal Credit Union at the time. And they always posted the executive board members' photos on the walls of every credit union. Once I was appointed, they immediately established a new policy that no board photos would be posted and all of them would be taken down. Not being invited to contribute to conversations about race, bias, and discrimination as the highest Black elected official. I mean, come on. But the real question becomes, what is your destiny and what are you willing to do to get there in spite of all that? Because just as many negative comments that there were out there, I heard positive ones too. But we tend to hold on to those negative narratives more, right? Today, I do encourage you to let them go. Just let all the negative narratives go. In politics, the only way I was able to get where I was at was to look at someone in the face, hear what they said, whether it was positive or negative, receive it, see if there was any truth in it, say thank you, shake their hand, and move on to the next. Whoever was possibly my enemy the last time could be my best friend the next time. You can't hold grudges. You just have to continually move forward. And that was a life philosophy that I chose to live by, which is, what do I want to be doing 10 years from now, 5 years from now? Am I still going to be doing the same thing? Or do I want to try to do something different just so that I can maybe be somewhere else? I remained underemployed during the entire 5 years of the economic downturn between 2008 and 2011. I could only get temp work with a master's degree, with experience working in community development. But the question I kept asking myself, and this is what kept me holding on, is how could I be worthy to work temporary work? And they just would always give me so much praise, but never allow me to work full time. And give me access to benefits, because that is what affects the Black community the most, right? The access to stability, security, life insurance, 401ks, medical plans, and medical care where you can actually make doctor's appointments with specialists that you might need. Those are the things I didn't get. So for me, those are, even though you can't say it's directly racial, because you can't say I didn't get that job because I was Black, but to be as educated as I am and as talented as I was, to never get chosen was difficult in this area. And the last thing I'm going to say is sometimes we're trained to believe that we're only as good as a job we can land, the titles we can hold, the access we're allowed. But that is farthest from the truth. Those titles and those positions are a result of the brilliant people that we already are. I remember being on the CLU campus, and I recall feeling out of place a little bit as a returning student. I was older than everyone else. I had kids. I was distinctly aware that I should work harder and faster and be more efficient and try to be indispensable. But we all know none of us are really indispensable. But I took on jobs that no one else wanted because I was trying to find security where there was none. So to me, that was a thing that I faced being an African-American woman. I don't know if that was something that everybody had to face. And then at the end of the day, I tried to find a way to take an overall negative narrative and create positive messages for myself and for the ability to make that palatable for the politically correct public. So as I was moving forward in my campaigns, you can't run a campaign saying, oh, woe is me. You know, I went through this and it's oh so hard. No, what you say is I was head of my household. You know, I ran 3 times. I raised $11,000 shaking one hand at a time. You know, you learn how to find those positive messages. And so that's what I encourage you to do today. Find the positive messages. Find a way to flip those negative things into positives.
Thank you. And the question for the same question for the rest of the panel, I can repeat that if you guys want me a refresher.
I can go next. I think, there are the obvious barriers that people of color will face. I think we can all describe some of these more dramatic things that people have said to us in our careers. But it's something that maybe we don't spend enough time talking about, some of the barriers that are more socioeconomic. I think most of us know the story of Mark Zuckerberg when he was at Harvard. He came up with this idea as a student and then decided to drop out of college and then go and pursue his entrepreneurial dream. Before him, Bill Gates and Larry Ellison also dropped out of college, and they're all billionaires now. But if you are African American, maybe you're one of the first or the first person in your extended family to go to college. and you've actually arrived at a great place like Harvard. Can you imagine that phone call back home to say, hey, I'm going to drop out and I'm going to go do this crazy startup? It's probably not going to happen, right? Because the family's counting on you to get that 6-figure job after you graduate and probably help your siblings and other people who need help who are coming behind you. And so what that means is that, risk taking is, which, for a lot of time is an essential part of being an entrepreneur. For a lot of people, that's not a practical choice they can make. And I feel like that's a big hurdle that a lot of us have to face. And so a lot of what we talk about when we talk about innovation is how can we expose more people of color to to the startup world in a way that mitigates some of the risk that's involved in taking the plunge. So anyway, that was one point I wanted to bring up that your question made me think of.
I'm going to flip
you.
your question because I think it's important for us to sort of flip it. So you've talked about barriers and barriers that may have impacted our success. And I'm going to flip it because I'd like to talk about ways in which we enable others to be successful, how we pull down the barriers for us so that we can then create pathways to success for others that come after us. I think one of the most significant things we can do in our roles as leaders is to pull another person and pull another person, pull as many people alongside us. So the point that Laurie makes about having leaders who will take her place, I think is a central point, particularly in our communities. How do we grow leadership? Knowing that there are barriers, knowing that there are the naysayers, knowing that there are going to be explicitly or implicitly racist comments made, right? How do we still grow enough of us so that the next generation will be there and they will have fewer barriers, we hope, right? And we work around than we do. And I'm giving some examples of how I'm invested in doing that at my institution and how we're doing that work. And part of that is, even as a faculty member, one of the things I was always very clear about is to figure out other faculty members of color, but other faculty members, in my case, that were foreigners, and help them find a path to success. Give them the lay of the land. And part of that is, as a dean, to make sure I identify faculty and staff who are of promise, and make sure that I connect them to opportunities to present at conferences. I connect them to opportunities to lead work groups. That I'm providing them entree and invitation to mentors, so that they can hear other voices other than my own, right? That they can get to build a network of support. So I think that's important. The other piece is, and this is a tough one, and now that I'm in this role, I realize even how tougher it is to be able to sort of speak your truth. Because often part of the challenge is that because we are not speaking our truth, people make assumptions about who we are and what we are and how we got to where we are today. And the more we're able to sort of speak our truth, and I can say to students, when I was at USC, there was times when I couldn't pay. And because I just, either the scholarship money didn't come from my country, or whatever was happening didn't happen. And that I had to go, there are times when I was hungry. And then there was times where, I had to sort of share my sorrow and my challenges with somebody who then heard me and said, okay, we'll give you another week, or we'll give you 2 more weeks, or, go to that office, maybe they can help you, etc. So making sure that we are telling our stories of struggle, but also when we become leaders, that we are telling our stories to the next generation of leaders, so that they have a very clear picture of what leadership means as a Black man, as a Black woman. Because I think leadership is different for us. And the more we're able to help prepare people for that difference. I'll give you an example. We had a situation last summer where there was the allegation that a faculty member at our institution spat at an individual during a rally, and that faculty member was supporting Blue Lives. So this event happened, and one of the first things that, I was counseled to do is, to be very careful about how I address that situation. And I heard that voice very clearly. I was an interim president. I heard that voice that was saying to me, be very cautious what you say, because you may not get to be permanent if you are political, right? And part of my initial response to that was to hear that and be cautious in my response. And in a way, even as the interim president of the college, I was silent, right? And I was complicit in my silence, for sure, but I was silent. And as the event sort of transpired, I was able to get feedback from our faculty and our staff that said, we need you to be the leader here. We need you to speak truth to power. And we need you to be the individual who not only stands for what is right, but brings others alongside you. And I think it's important for folks who are in leadership to hear that there are moments where you will have to be the angry Black man or the angry Black woman. And there are moments where you cannot be that, right? Because you don't help the cause. So how do you negotiate that? And how do we prepare people to know what the appropriate response is? So I think those are some of the ways in which we need to sort of help one another be sustained in these roles. Because as you get the role, but there's no guarantee you can keep it, or that folks will help you keep it. So the more we can come armed with the skill sets to deal with the affective elements of this. Having the technical expertise is one thing, but it's very clear that technical expertise alone and competence alone and diligence alone and being innovative alone will not sustain us in these positions. For us to keep moving and for us to keep doing the work, we need to have that additional quality of being able to navigate the politics. And there's so much of that often I see folks who fall alongside the way and they leave institutions. They do so because the politics has become unbearable. And so how do we help people be sustained in the context of the politics?
Julius, maybe if I could just add one thing to that, and I totally agree with everything that you said, but what other element I think is really important for us in terms of how do we overcome the obstacles is, the responsibility of overcoming those obstacles related to, barriers around race, discrimination, etc., especially for senior leaders, it cannot only be our responsibility. It has to be a shared responsibility, which means that we need allies, we need our mentors, and we need our sponsors to be able to work with us and help us to be able to overcome these obstacles. And I think we spoke about it earlier on as well. We need to create our own little communities where we have people who are like us, who look like us, who talk like us. But at the same time, in the workspace and in these leadership roles, we can't bear that brunt all alone. It's so important for allies to be there and to speak up and to stand up and be true partners for overcoming all the challenges we have around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. So just wanted to add the important point around allies and allyship.
Thank you so much for all those points. So now we're approaching time. Just if there's any panelist who has any closing motto or little quote they want to leave with us as we close out.
I just want to say thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share our experiences. The questions really drive a lot of what we recollect and what we can share. There's so many things that happens to us in our collective lives that it's kind of hard to pull out all those little things that happen over 10, 20 years and, put them in like 5-minute sound bites. But, I will say, for those of you who know me, and they're probably like, well, Laura, you're not saying that you're this, that, and the other. And I know I don't list my titles and all the things that I do. And because I feel like primarily on this platform, I'm here to encourage and to let people know what's capable when you don't give up. But I will say, I'm a council member for the city of Ventura. I'm an elected delegate for the California Democratic Party. I am an elected board member of the Black Caucus of the CDP. And being a council member, it allows me the opportunity to do things like sit on the regional council for the Southern California Association of Governments. It allows me the opportunity to, travel across the state and do certain things. And so there's perks and everything that you get the opportunity to do in your life. So I would encourage students, future leaders, even when I was sitting on the supervisory committee, one of the perks is that they would send you on trainings in other states to learn more about how credit unions work. And it was at their expense completely. And they had a credit union conference that was in the Caribbean. And I took that opportunity. So I think I just want to encourage you guys, let you know that there's opportunities out there to do unique little things. Don't feel like your plan or your template or your blueprint has to look exactly like somebody else's. It's all you. It's how you want to get there. And all the things you want to do along the way. Like I graduated from the Ventura County Leadership Academy. That's a good place to start sometimes for some people. I sat on boards of nonprofits like Cause. I sat on the Downtown Parking Advisory Committee of the city before I was elected. And I'm just offering these things up because I think sometimes we don't know where we can go or what we can do. We don't even know what's available out there a lot of the time. And don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't even flinch. When I submitted my paperwork to go on that Caribbean cruise, I said, yeah, I want to go to this place. Thank you. You just have to be confident in what you want and where you want to go. So those are my final words, and thank you for having me.
Okay, just to close us out, thank you guys so much, the panel, for supporting our students, for supporting the program, and just for being here to speak to us. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to pass, in the interest of time, I'm going to pass it off for a quick minute to Regina to close out the program. But that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for supporting this.
Thank you so much, Landry. I want to say a special word of thanks to Councilperson Lori Brown, to Dr. Motsepe Deshigo, to Hugh Malotsi, and to Dr. Julius Sokanu. This is the first project for the Community Scholars for Black Lives that is getting a public showing. This is Landry's project is the first. We have 2 additional students in the Community Scholars for Black Lives. One of our scholars is in the wings. I don't know if she's multitasking. That's Zeno Ayatoma. And she will be exposing to the world her work. And there is yet another student, Sia Williams, who has a book club. And Zeno's project is all around the inequities in healthcare. And so we are delighted to have had this panel. Landry, thank you. Thank you to our distinguished panelists. You taught us much. Even those of us who are not young and early in our careers, we have learned so much from you. So thank you on behalf of Dr. Owens, the co-founder of the Community Scholars for Black Lives program, and all of us at Cal Lutheran as we are growing and learning together. Thank you and enjoy a fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend. Thank you all.